Lesson 1-2, Day 1, we're going to discuss points, lines, and planes. In geometry, these three terms are the basic foundational terms for everything that we will do in geometry this year. And it's hard to actually define them, so we call them undefined terms, and we give a description of those terms. A point is a location in space. And in geometry, a point is denoted in a picture by simply a point, a dot. And then we name it by putting a capital letter next to it. So if I want to name this point, I could name it point A. And I use a capital letter. So if I saw that in a drawing, I would call it point A. A plane, line is next. A line, we can think of it as a series of points extending infinitely in two directions. So when you see a drawing of a line, it's just a straight path. It's a whole bunch of points. There's an infinite number of points on that line, even though we can't see the individual points. However, we can put a couple of points on it, make it bigger so that we can see them, and we could name them. We could call this point X, this point Y, this point Z. And to name a line, we can use any 2 points that are on the line. So I could put XY, and I put a little line symbol above it. That's not the only way we can name the line. We could do it, we could say line ZX. Order doesn't matter because the line goes through those points and it extends forever in both directions infinitely. Another way that we can name a line is by using a lowercase script letter. And it's usually at the end of the line, and there won't be a point on the line because M isn't a location on that line. It's just naming the line. And so I could just write on my paper that this is line M. A plane. A plane is something consisting of infinitely many lines or points and has a length and a width direction. And a drawing in our textbooks will usually be a parallelogram, kind of shaded, and it might show some points. It might show a line going through a couple of points. I'll name these A, B, and C. So even though I've only identified 3 points, there's an infinite number of points in that plane. There's an infinite number of lines in that plane. So one way that I can name it is by using 3 points that are not on the same line. So I could call it plane ABC. I could call it plane CAB if I wanted to. Order doesn't matter. Or going back to our other way to donate it, sometimes there might be a script letter in a corner and there's no dot by it, so it's not a point. If we see that, we know it's naming the plane, calling it plane R. So basics of geometry is the foundation for all of the shapes that we have. And a point, we can talk about dimensions. A point has 0 dimension, has no size, has no shape. It's just a location. A line has 1 dimension, meaning it can have a length. It goes on forever and ever, but it just goes on in opposite directions, so it has 1 dimension. A plane has 2 dimensions. We can think of it as having a length and a width. All right, let's look at these examples down here. If you want, pause and you see if you can come up with correct answers for these, and then I'll give you some correct answers. All right, if we want to use this figure to write at the right to name each of the following. We want a line containing point X. So I'm going to use my highlighter here so you can see this is the line that I'm talking about. Line that contains point X. There are 1, 2, X, Y, and R are 3 points that are named on that line. So one way that I could name it would be using 2 of the points that are on the line. So I could say, oh, I'm still on my highlighter, sorry, switch to my pen. I could call it line XR. That's one way. That's not the only correct answer. I could call it line RY. Again, any 2 points that are on the line I can use. Or I could use this script letter in the corner and just simply call it line M. Sometimes that's just easier. Now, for a plane containing points W and R, the plane is the flat surface. Think of it kind of like as a piece of paper or a tabletop. Let me erase my other stuff. So I want a plane that is, name the plane that's containing the points W and R. So I could call it by that script letter in the corner. That would really be the easiest way. Call it plane B. But it's not the only way. The other way is to use 3 non-collinear points, or 3 points that are on the same line. So I could use X, W, and R, because that's talking about that flat surface. Again, I could use, it doesn't have to be in that order, I could call it RWX, I could call it XWY, I could call it YRW, any 3 points. I cannot call it XYR, and I'll show you during a Zoom session why I can't call it XYR. I'll do that later or next class period. If you notice, we've got a line L here. I just want to talk about what line L is doing. Line L is going through the plane. So if this parallelogram, this shaded flat surface, was a piece of paper, line L, think of it as a pencil going down through the piece of paper. That's why it's dotted along here. That means you can't see it. It's coming down and it's going through the plane at point R, and then it's going down below it. So point Z would be like a point in space underneath the piece of paper, if that helps you visualize what's going on in that drawing. All right, moving on. Next set of notes. I already used the word collinear when I was describing that last picture, and collinear has the word line in it. So it's just means that we have 3 or more points on the same line. So I say 3 or more points because if you just pick 2 points, 2 points are always going to have a line that can be drawn through them. But to be collinear means that those 3 points have to be in the same path. Those would be collinear. If you have 3 points like those, that's going to be non-collinear because they are not in a straight line. So collinear, on the same line, non-collinear, not in a straight line. Then we can do the same thing for coplanar and non-coplanar. Coplanar points are, or objects, are objects that are in the same plane. Non-coplanar would be objects that are not on the same plane. So to take a look at some examples in this drawing, collinear. If I have this drawing over here, what are 3 points that are collinear? Well, R, Q, and S are collinear. Some that are non-collinear. Let's name 3 points that are not collinear. R, V, Q, non-collinear. Coplanar, things that are in the same plane. So let's pick some points that are all in the same plane. The points R, Q, S, and V are all in the same plane. Now, can I name some points that are not in the same planes as those points? Well, if this parallelogram is showing me a flat surface, it's a piece of paper, and this line M is going through the plane, that would be like a pencil going through the piece of paper. So it's not in the plane. So T is above the plane, N is below the plane. And so I can say that, I'll just write that on there, above plane P, because here's capital P in the corner, and call it plane P, and this one is below plane P. So some objects that are on the same plane, R, Q, S, and T, those 4 points are not in the same plane. 3 of them are, the 4th one is not. All right, let's take a look at this. Go ahead and see if you can answer these questions down here, pause it, and then come back and watch the rest. All right, how many planes are shown in the figure? So I have here a picture of a prism. And so a prism is made up of how many sides? Well, I have a triangle on this end. There's one. I have a triangle on this end. That's representing a second plane. And then I have the sides around it. So there's actually 3 rectangles that are around the outside. So there's a total of 5 planes represented in that picture. B, name 3 points that are collinear. There are 2 different correct answers here. One would be the points A, H, and B, or I could answer points B, J, and F. Those would be 2 examples of 3 points that are collinear. Now, how about points that are non-collinear? There are a whole bunch of possibilities for that. Whole bunch of possibilities. So one example, I could say points A, oh, got my eraser on. Points A, C, E. A is in this corner, C is this vertex, E is this vertex. Those are not in on the same line. Another example, how about A, let me do a different color here, A, B, F. Okay, those 3 are not in the same, on the same line. All right, last question is, name a point that's in the same plane as points C, E, and F. So here's C, pin. Here's E, and here's F. So if we identify the plane that is, that C, E, and F are all in, I'm going to highlight it here in blue. The plane that all of those points are in are actually what I think of as the bottom of that prism that's sitting on a tabletop. And so C, E, and F, we can name it just with those 3 points, but this point D is also in that plane. So we could say point D is coplanar with points C, E, and F. A point that is non-coplanar as C, E, and F. There are many different options. You could say B, because it's up here at the top. That would be one answer. H, A, J. Any of those other points would be non-coplanar with C, E, and F. All right, you can work on your Math Excel now. If you have any questions about this, I'm still available during Zoom, so feel free to ask me any questions.